Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Skyjed's webinar, How to Comply with ASIC's Design and Distribution Obligations. My name's Andrew Chamberlain, and I'm the Head of Sales and Customer Success here at Skyjed, and I'm very pleased today to be joined by Leica Ison, who is the CEO and founder of Skyjed. So just by way of quick introduction, Leica has extensive experience in leading product and engineering teams in technology and highly regulated industries such as telecommunications, IoT and healthcare markets, where she held roles as Chief Technology Officer, Head of Product and Head of Product. In her executive career, she's launched more than 55 technology products to market across both consumer and B2B markets, and her team's achievements have been recognised with 5 Innovation and Customer Design Awards. She started her career studying a Bachelor of Applied Science in System Thinking and Experiential Learning, and a Master's at Law at Sydney University, and she's undertaken Harvard University leadership programs in growth, innovation, renewal and strategic negotiation. She's a recipient of Australian government scholarships, including Women in Technology for the Board Diversity Program and an Asian Business Practice Cultural Study Tour Scholarship. Lisa's got a really deep understanding of product governance and regulatory compliance. And so please take the opportunity today to not only listen, but ask those burning DDO questions by typing them into the Q&A box you'll see at the bottom. And at the end of the session, we'll answer as many of those as we can live today, and then we'll get back to anyone directly, which we don't have the time to answer this afternoon. Also joining me today is Talene Pitaway, who is our Senior Customer Success Manager, and she'll be helping us with Q&A as well. So with that, I'd like to again thank you for joining us today, and I'll hand over to Leica. Thanks, Leica. Take it away.
Thanks, Andrew. Hi, everyone. I'm Leica, and great to have you join us today. I'm going to talk today about product governance and the design and distribution obligations. I've got a pretty focused, short, sharp 20-minute presentation before the questions. And what I'll cover, I'll just quickly recap on the DDO obligations and how you can get started. And then at the end, I'll just spend some time introducing you to Skyjed as an innovative framework and solution for a straightforward implementation of the design and distribution obligations as you, I guess, seek to embed the new governance models in your product and your compliance teams across the organisation. So let's kick off. I'll just sort of talk you through it. I'm just going to start off with just a quick recap. A couple of people overnight have asked me just to do a quick recap on the obligations in the governance framework. So I'll go through that and then just talk a little bit about why it matters anyway. So as a recap, we know DDO is all about your financial products, with a focus on the retail products and regulated across those three acts: the corporation acts, the consumer credit, etc. And there are some exclusions there. We also know that we now have a little bit more time for the implementation, and I'll share some insights and learnings with you today that we've got from current in-flight projects that have already kicked off. And also, I think, to flag that some of the learnings, the global learnings that have been shared with us really is to say that the longer you leave this implementation, of course, the complexity of embedding the governance in your organisation increases. So just a little, I guess a little bit more about what's at the heart of our product governance framework. And one thing I'm pretty passionate about is that good product governance between your lifecycle teams and your compliance teams needs to be embedded in that customer-centric approach. So you see, as I go through the presentation today, I guess at the heart of the governance model is about getting the right financial product to the right consumer and providing that fair value. But definitely what we're seeing as teams start to do that, it's not just about the benefits of implementing your regulatory obligations. We're also seeing benefits come from, that focus on the customer, about improving your product value propositions and the growth across your product portfolios. I think the other thing I'll flag in this governance framework and the design and distribution obligations, you'll see a real theme today where I talk about collaboration being absolutely crucial to the success of the framework. And that collaboration is really about your product lifecycle teams working really closely with your professional teams across your risk and your compliance areas to break down those silos. So that's at a really high level. So let's drill down a bit more. This is for those people that have just asked for a recap on what's in the obligations as you kick off your projects. You'll see here, I think when you first look at the obligations, you might feel that they look really complex at first take. But however, you know, once you start pulling them apart, the product governance model that's there is really quite logical and straightforward. And I think as you go to implement it, you'll know that there's sort of two key areas. There's the obligations on the product designer, and that might be designing a new product or a new feature on an existing product, or it may be the obligations then across on the distribution of that product into your various distribution channels. So what I've just laid out here is just a quick recap. I guess we're seeing 5 essential product governance areas for you to address as you're kickstarting your projects and implementing the model. And you can see in this slide, I'll just quickly step through the obligations on the product designer or issuer, starting with that target market determination. And I'll step you through in a while how all of this is automated in Skyjed for you, but it does start with setting your target market determination at your planning stage, and of course, reviewing and monitoring that target market determination. And again, what we're finding is that in setting that target market, it's very strong collaboration between your product and your marketing teams and back in with your regulatory teams to understand those obligations. Thirdly, the model talks about active or continuous monitoring. So how we've embedded that in our product governance framework is the ability for you to be able to set a consistent review of your product portfolios in the governance framework. And then number 4 and 5 here on the designer, these are the obligations about the notifications to ASIC and keeping records. And again, those notifications and the record keeping is all automated in our governance solution for DDO. Similar kind of obligations on the distributor. I won't go through those, but they're set out pretty clearly in the governance framework. So I guess in terms of everyone out there that's getting started, I'll just share with you some of the learnings that we've got from current in-flight projects. As I said, that the runway for implementation may seem like a long period of time out, but definitely we're seeing some benefits of teams kickstarting with the Skyjed framework, and a couple of benefits are coming out of that. The first one is really kickstarting the governance framework to almost set a baseline of your product portfolios and complete your first risk assessment of your product portfolios. And as the teams are doing that, of course, they're finding gaps. But the other benefit that's coming out of implementing this governance model is being able to highlight those products that maybe are at the end of their life cycle or aren't no longer the feature or benefit to the customer is strong relative to the consumer. So we're seeing teams use this governance as an opportunity to simplify their product portfolios in quite a pragmatic way. The other area I just flag around implementing the new governance model and what we're seeing, it is possible to use this governance framework to work remotely. With COVID, we've onboarded and got examples of teams where they're starting to implement the governance model and doing that virtually between their product and their compliance teams. So that's just a quick recap on the key elements we're seeing on the design and distribution obligations. And now I'll just talk a bit about our governance framework at Skyjed, and just pull apart how it works, and I guess starting with some of the key principles that are embedded in our framework. So as an introduction, Skyjed does help you quickly and efficiently put in place the new governance model for the design and distribution obligations. And it ensures that you can maintain that compliance across your product lifecycle via our platform. And there's a couple of innovative features in the governance framework that I'd just like to take you through before we look at some examples of how it works. So the first idea in this governance framework is that it includes what we call continuous auditing cycle. So continuous monitoring of your products and your product portfolio. And it does that with automated product risk planning and action planning. So if you can just see on this slide, I'll just drill down a little bit more about the governance framework. And the first area you can see up the top of the slide is that in our governance frameworks, we support your product and compliance teams to monitor a product portfolio end to end. And that monitoring includes all of your financial, your operational, and your non-financial drivers of your product health. And at Skyjed, in our governance framework, we've called that oversight the 5 domains of product health. So that means as a product leader or a compliance professional in an organisation, you can have confidence that you've got a framework that gives you that end-to-end visibility. So it starts, you can see on the left-hand side, it starts with looking and assessing and monitoring all your drivers of revenue, what's happening in your market, what are your competitors doing. It includes monitoring your end-to-end value chains and your drivers of costs in your product portfolios. Importantly, there's a big focus in the framework on the teams reviewing your customer journey and your customer value propositions. We also support you in that 4th domain at looking at innovation and disruption across the product area. And then finally, the framework includes the management of your regulatory obligations. So that domain includes everything you need to monitor for the design and distribution obligations, but also includes things like monitoring modern slavery across a product portfolio and your climate-related risks. So you're getting that nice end-to-end review framework that's all templated for you for your product portfolios. The second area that I think is really important in product governance is that it's this continuous monitoring, continuous improvement cycle. And you can see here that in the Skyjed governance framework, we've got those 5 key steps, starting at your product planning stage, moving through monitoring and reviewing your product portfolios and issuing a kind of health assessment and improvement plans. Now, really importantly, once you've done your assessment, it does take the step to implement the improvement and the risk mitigation plans so that you're continuously monitoring and improving the product portfolio. It's pretty simple, but it's pretty powerful to get that consistency and, I guess, discipline across your cross-functional teams. Now, the final area that I just want to introduce you to in our framework, and this has been talked a lot about in the Hayne Royal Commission and just generally in product teams globally, and that's around getting the type of reporting that can give you transparency and visibility into your product portfolios. So what we've created in Skyjed is a very unique product health check, and that product health check is presented to you in a visual color-coded way, and it gives you an assessment of the risk profile in your product portfolio out of 100. And this, as I said, it comes as automated board-ready reporting, and it's really powerful to be able to compare over time how your product portfolio's tracking, not only with opportunity, but those risk profiles and risk mitigations. So in Skyjed, we call that our health check reporting between your product and your risk teams and across the organisation. And that's all automated for you. So you might be sitting there and saying, well, how do we do that? So before I step through an example, this is just an overview. I won't go sort of deeply into the technology, but you can have confidence that we are using advanced data analytics to support your product and compliance teams with all the insights that they need. And we're doing that with an artificial intelligence-based engine that automates for you all of those rich insights. And you can see down the bottom of this slide, the technology's fine, but what's coming out of that to support you and what's really useful is those health check reports, health indexes for your product and your compliance teams to be able to use. And those insights are based on more than sort of 200 different data sets across your product and your product information, your performance data and your customer metrics to give you those insights. The second part of it, as I said, is these risk insights. Now, in my more than 20 years of leading product teams, I've had the benefit of working really closely with the risk and compliance teams. So what we've embedded in Skyjed is that we automate for the product teams a risk assessment of the product that they can share with compliance teams. And those risk assessments include risk mitigation actions and strategic action plans. So that's a quick summary of what's behind, I guess, our governance framework. And then now just a quick example, because you might be sitting there and saying, well, how does all that work pragmatically? So I'll just talk you through a quick example of using Skyjed for your design and distribution obligations. So in this example, I'm the sort of product leader of a mortgage portfolio, and you can see I've created my Skyjed workspace, and I go in, and my first step is to create my product strategy. It can either be for a new or an existing product. I create the product strategy, and then really importantly, I invite into the product monitoring workspace, my virtual team. And what we're seeing as best practice is the product owner, the product proposition manager, inviting someone from risk, someone from legal, finance, marketing, and they can collaborate in real time around the assessment of your product lifecycle. All really easy to set up. We've had teams set up and get started in a really short period of time. So once I've invited in my team, I then commence my product audit. And again, this is all laid out for you. We guide you through how you review your product in templates, and the data and the assessment framework around that is very simple to use. So that's led by the product owner with all the rich input from your virtual team. Once you've gone through that assessment and set the baseline for your product portfolio, the analytics, they do the real-time assessment of the data and create for you the reports and insights. So we mentioned it generates that health check score. In this example, my product's coming out with a rating of 78. So I know I've got good growth in the product, but I've got some real challenges to address. So it doesn't stop there. What we then now do as a virtual team, we collaborate and build an action plan around addressing the risk and the opportunity in that product. And again, those plans are either a strategic action, and they're normally about growth and improving the value proposition of the product, or they're risk mitigation actions. So you have two types of actions. Those actions are assigned, you can track, and you monitor those action plans, and then start your next audit cycle. So all pretty simple. And I guess what we're seeing as best practice is that product teams are in this governance model completing quarterly audits of their product, those 90-day reviews with the virtual team. They're setting monthly risk action plans, and they're monitoring those weekly in their virtual workspace. So you're getting that nice, consistent discipline across the organisation and across your product portfolios around that review cycle. So I guess just to summarise, and for anyone that wants to have a demo and go in and we can show you examples of products that are being assessed in this framework. I think for me, just a couple of takeouts of this. The first one is that, in organisations, everyone gets really busy and things are changing so much. So I think the point of this governance framework that we've developed in Skyjed for the design and distribution obligations is that it sets up accountability, a single point of accountability for your product lifecycle, and that's called the product owner. Some teams are calling that the product proposition manager, product owner, product manager. But there is now a single point of accountability for the rectification or improvement of product risk. It's not just a passive audit and review, and it's set and forget. So it gives you that visibility, but importantly, the consistency of review, improve, track action across your product and your compliance and your virtual teams. So that's a quick snapshot of how the governance framework works in Skyjed. And now I'll just recap and I guess circle back to where we started and just show you what that means in terms of how you can get started with your design and distribution obligations. So you can certainly have a copy of this post the call, but this is a quick flow chart that I'll just spend a couple of minutes just taking you through it so you get a flavour of how the governance framework sits in relation to the design and distribution obligations. So you can see here, obviously on the left-hand side, I've got the issuer or the designer. Over on the right-hand side, your distributor. But in the Skyjed workspace, the issuer, we've set out what we call the ABCD of your product design and distribution obligations. So this is all automated for you. So it's about capturing that target market, defining your negative target market, listing out those conditions and restrictions, and defining the triggers. So in Skyjed, we do all of that in that regulatory and customer domains that I talk you through. It's all templated, and the triggers and notifications you can set and automate yourself. So that's the ABCD. Then we go down, and there's 5 key steps that we take you on that journey of best practice, product governance and reviewing. And those steps, as I've talked about before, set out a review cadence for your organisations. We've got some teams doing the quarterly 90-day cadence. We've got other teams starting off with more a 6-monthly review until they find their feet, and then they will pull back to a shorter cycle. Creating your virtual team, I talked about that earlier. Success here absolutely requires that real-time collaboration between your product lifecycle and your compliance teams, and doing that with the continuous auditing framework and automating all those reports just means it just saves a lot of time and gives you, that consistency of review. As you step down to the bottom on this slide, you'll see in Skyjed, we've also automated the Form A and Form Bs that you need to provide to the regulator. And Skyjed also provides you with the capability of, I guess, a company-wide register of your product audits and your health check scores. And that comes with it. It's all date stamped, an audit trail that you can keep for 7 years. And if you need to, you can go back and drill down into that past life cycle history with all the comments and actions that were in play when you were doing that review. So again, I guess that's important for the regulator reporting, but also it comes with the benefits as your product managers or your risk managers start to change roles or change accountabilities. You've just got a really easy way to go back and hand over that rich insights around your product portfolios that drills down into the non-financial and operational risks in the health checking process. So that's a quick step through. In a similar way, across on the distributor side, we connect, you can connect and share that ABCD of your target market determination with your distributor or your sales team. And then we also step through 5 key steps in the governance model of what the distributor needs to do just to ensure that they're not providing a financial product that doesn't fit with the target market determination, and that they're taking reasonable steps to monitor and improve it. So that's just the really high level workflow that sits behind Skyjed's design and distribution obligations in the solution, and an overview of really, I guess, how you can get started and move to this governance model quickly and efficiently. So that's the overview, and I will just recap. You can see here, I've just summarised at a high level, and there's plenty of detail around this, all the different elements across the design and distribution obligation, that product governance model. They can all be easily addressed in Skyjed as you go through and implement the solution across that embedding, I guess, that governance model in your organisation. Likewise, all of the areas for your target market determinations are covered. And then finally, the confidence that your reporting and the templates you need and the records are, again, all stored there to be able to access in real time. So look, that's the snapshot. I'm keen to take any questions. So Andrew, I'll hand back over to you to kickstart the questions on product governance or DDO or whatever we need to cover.
Terrific, thanks Lisa, that was great. If you just want to flick through to the next slide around our DDO guide. So everyone, thanks for joining us today. We will get to some questions in a moment. Just before we do, everyone who attends today or who registered today will get a copy of the recording of today's session. So that will come along, and there'll also be a link there to our DDO compliance guide. So that compliance guide actually goes through step by step of every one of the obligations that needs to be addressed and shows how Skyjed can help you do that. So it's a really great resource there. So everyone will get that as soon as the recording's ready. So we do have a couple of questions here, and I think this is a great one. This comes in from one of our attendees. What's the usual lead time to complete an integration between a firm and Skyjed to share data? So how long does it take to implement it?
Yeah, so look, what we're typically seeing is that you can go in and create and set up your workspace and get that started. I mean, that's a very simple process. We've had people doing that in kind of less than an hour. But embedding the framework, what we're seeing is, I guess, an implementation over 5 weeks, where businesses are starting to embed the governance framework around a review of some strategic products to get started. So using that 5-week implementation to set a baseline across their product portfolios, use all of the drivers and templates that are there, and as they go through that first 5-week journey, using that as a basis to then look at if they want any modifications, or importantly, what kind of data that they do want to automate into the solution. And we really recommend that nice sort of setting that baseline, using the tool, and then following with a broader rollout across your portfolios. What we're also seeing at the moment is strategically some teams in that 5-week cycle are including in that first review some products that are that need divesting or are at the end of life. So the governance framework is useful for that product introduction, but also monitoring those other sort of products in the portfolio.
Okay, terrific. Thank you.
Hope that answers the question.
No, I think it does very well. And I guess following on from that, does Skyjed integrate with existing systems such as risk systems and CRMs? Yes, it does. What I guess sort of a couple of things that we're seeing. I mentioned in our framework that it covers the financial, the operational and non-financial metrics in our product assessments. As teams go through and set that baseline, what we are actually finding is that the data that is automated in systems typically is around your financial metrics or some of your customer metrics. A number of the metrics that are required or the information that you need actually right now isn't in an automated system. And so that's why I was saying that businesses are using it to set a baseline of where the knowledge actually exists in an organisation. So a lot of that non-financial risk is either in someone's head, in a strategy pack or in an assessment. So it's about bringing that together and then looking strategically
at what data you do want to automate into those drivers, or indeed creating new templates to capture the trigger data that you want to go into it.
Okay, terrific. Okay, and I guess one last one. This is a bit more around the compliance side of things. Can Skyjed be used to help with satisfying BEAR?
The short answer is yes. And again, we've got one organisation at the moment that is using it to embed a single point of accountability across their product lifecycle, and that is their product owner or their product portfolio lead, and then that person is accountable for that lifecycle strategy. And what we're seeing, which I think is really important for BEAR, is that the framework itself, the governance framework in Skyjed, goes through a life cycle. So what that means is that it starts with your product planning stage, it moves through to your product development stage, your product introduction and your go-to-market. It has a stage for managing your new and existing products, and then finally a stage to support you divesting or sunsetting of those products. And the way it's set up in terms of that single point of accountability, when I go into Skyjed, the roles are all defined. So I would be the product owner. I'd have reviewers and contributors and decision makers. But importantly, if I move, if I was promoted and I moved to another role, all of that rich information about where the product life cycle's at, that handover now becomes really seamless to keep that accountability intact and the visibility across your life cycle. I think the other part, pragmatic part of BEAR is what I touched on today. It's just not about setting the strategy and doing a review. It's about having confidence that there is a person there and a virtual team that's accountable to set those risk mitigation actions and follow them through. So the accountability it's not set and forget, it's about improvement, if that makes sense. And probably just final point on that, Andrew, I think this framework, and to be honest, good governance and risk management is about that improvement, and that improvement certainly is around improving your value proposition and therefore probably the revenue of your product, that growth side of it. But it's also around all those drivers of trust that we rely on our compliance, our regulatory and legal teams as product leaders to support with that in the review cycle.
Okay, terrific. I've got one more just to really finish things off, but this is an interesting one. So will previous versions of the target market determination be kept in Skyjed, and is there full auditing permission tools and permissions tools?
Yes. So the way Skyjed is set up, as I mentioned earlier, it's about that audit cycle. So it does give you point in time snapshots and an audit trail of your product review. So it's really up to you what cadence you want to set around that. But once your snapshot or your audit is published, it can't be unpublished. So it's timestamped. All the audit trail, all the strategic actions, all the comments are in that point in time snapshot for you to report on back 7 years. Likewise, logically, no target market determination ever sits still. Everything's constantly changing, and we do want our product and marketing and compliance teams to be continuously reviewing what their competitors are doing, reviewing what's happening in the market, reframing their product features and their value propositions, and also updating those those personas in their target market. So they are embedded as a snapshot, but they are also reviewed each time you conduct your auditing cycle to keep them fresh and updated.
Very good.
I hope that answers the question.
No, that certainly does. That's great. Well, thank you everyone again. We've sort of run out of time. We're right up against it now, but that was great, Lisa. Thank you so much for that today. And thank you to everyone for joining and asking all those questions as well. There are a couple there that we haven't been able to get to, but we'll reach out on those this afternoon and just let you know what the answers are to that. As I did mention, you will get an email. It'll have a link to the recording of this as well as our DDO guide, and there'll also be a link there to put your hand up if you'd like to have a look at the platform and have a discussion about how we might be able to implement Skyjed into your organisation. So thanks very much again, guys. Really appreciate it, and I'll look out for that email. And if you've got any questions, please don't hesitate to get in touch. Thanks very much.